Scary Stories for Sleepovers by R.C. Welch. Illustrated by Ricardo Delgado. The Gift. Jason poked a pencil at the ants. The little black insects exploded into action, running around in tight circles and bumping into each other. Jason chuckled and scraped the pencil back and forth in the dirt, covering the hole to the ant's nest. The workers scurried around crazily. Jason watched them for a while, then stepped away from his dresser and tossed the pencil back onto his desk. He sat glumly on his bed with his chin in his hands. Then he heard rapping at his bedroom window and turned around to look. "Hey," said Eddie, Jason's neighbor, from outside the window. "Want to come down to the fort with me and Mitch?" "I can't," said Jason with disgust. "I've got to stay inside today." "Why?" "I got grounded." Eddie snorted. "What for?" Jason waved a hand at the ant farm. "My cousin gave me that for my birthday, and I told him I thought it was a dumb gift." He sighed. "And now my dad's making me stay inside as a lesson in politeness." Eddie laughed with the careless freedom of someone who's outside on a warm summer day. He jumped back from the window. "All right, see you later." Jason watched him run down the street. His eyes were drawn back to the unwanted gift on top of his dresser. He still couldn't figure out why his cousin would give him something like that. He thought it was a pretty stupid gift. A flat, plastic box filled with dirt and a bunch of black ants. If he wanted to watch ants, he could go out in the backyard. There were about 100 other things he could think of that would have made a better gift. He stared at the farm on top of his dresser. "I should just throw it away," he mumbled. But he knew his parents would get even more angry if he did that. They might ground him for the rest of the month. He stood up and shook the farm. The ant tunnels collapsed as the dirt shifted around. "Stupid ants," Jason said, and left the room. He tried watching TV, but soon grew bored with that. He went out in the backyard for a while, but he grew tired of that too. He could normally spend hours in the garden playing with his gang of superheroes, but not when he was forced to. He trudged back to his room to find something to do. His eyes narrowed as he spied the industrious ants rebuilding their tunnels and nests. He shook the plastic container again, sending the ants scurrying to dig out their trapped comrades. He decided to fix lunch. While he was searching for the mustard, an idea came to him. Grabbing a bottle of vinegar from the cupboard, he went back to his room and poured a few drops on the ants. The results were pretty disappointing. The ants didn't like it, of course, but all they really did was scutter away and perform some strange ritual that looked as if they were trying to clean themselves. Jason tried a lot of other things next. He was going to suffer from being grounded all day, and the cause of his suffering was the ants, so they were going to pay. He tried salt, rubbing alcohol, and water, none of which did anything. Then he did something he knew was wrong. His parents would ground him for a year if they caught him. But he boiled some water and poured that on the ants. They died instantly. Then he grabbed some hydrogen peroxide from the bathroom. Although the boiling water was the most effective, the hydrogen peroxide was the most impressive. Jason poured about a tablespoon of it onto one corner of the farm. Within seconds of the liquid splashing onto them, the ants began to shake and dance as if they were being electrocuted. They lost all sense of direction and ran around in crazy patterns. Their legs seemed to be going in different directions at the same time. Then they kind of wound themselves into a circle, twitched a little while longer, and died. Jason thought it was great. He spent a couple of hours torturing the ants before he got bored. Then he went and found his dad in the garage. "Dad?" he asked quietly. His father looked over at him from the workbench. Jason tried to look as humble as he could. "I know it was mean of me to say that Brian's gift was dumb. I guess I was hoping for something else." Jason's father put one elbow on the workbench and studied Jason. "Why the change of heart? Getting bored?" Jason abandoned the humble approach. "Can't I please go over to Eddie's house?" he begged. "I won't complain about anybody's gift from now on." His father looked at his watch. Then he turned back to his project. "All right," he said. Then he turned his head quickly and looked seriously at Jason. "Don't do it again," he warned in a tone of voice that Jason knew from past experience to be an ultimate order. "Okay." He tore out of the garage and ran down the street to the fort. He spent the rest of the afternoon playing with his friends and forgot all about his aunts. Late in the day, he came back just in time to wash up and have dinner. After that, he took his shower. He didn't even look at the ant farm until that evening. The ants had been busy while he was out. They had redug their tunnels. Jason looked at the tunnels, but there was something strange about the way they were laid out, even something familiar. Suddenly, he realized what was so familiar. An icy chill swept through his body, taking his breath with it. He took a step closer, unable to believe what he was seeing. The dead-end tunnels and oddly shaped burrows formed letters. They spelled out a simple word, H-A-T-E. Jason's jaw began to ache, and he realized his teeth were clamped tightly shut. He stared at the ants a moment longer, then ran to the bathroom. He grabbed the bottle of hydrogen peroxide from the shelf, but his hands were shaking so badly, he dropped it. "Jason!" He heard his mother call from the kitchen. "What are you doing?" "Nothing, Mom," he managed to yell back. He snatched up the bottle and ran back to his room, biting his lip to keep from screaming. Breathing heavily, he stalked toward the ant farm. When he reached the front of his dresser, he unscrewed the cap off the bottle. Then, with great determination, he slowly poured the hydrogen peroxide over the whole farm. As the deathly liquid washed over the ants, they burst into convulsive frenzy. Their bodies jittered and danced across the soil as the peroxide burned its way into their systems. Jason watched without pity as the liquid seeped down into the tunnels. Then he shuddered and looked around the room as if he didn't recognize it. The ant farm was half filled with liquid, and hundreds of ants were thrashing out their deaths. With a sob, he set the bottle down. Then, as cautiously as he would touch a snarling dog, he picked up the farm. He held it at arm's length, and he snuck through the house and out to the trash cans in the backyard. Into the trash it went. Then he ran back inside. As soon as he had calmed down and caught his breath, he went to the living room. "Night, Mom," he said, kissing her on the cheek. "Night, Dad." His parents wished him good night, and he returned to his room. Climbing into bed, lying back on his pillow, he tried to think about anything but the ant farm. But he couldn't. "That wasn't real," he whispered to himself. He kept thinking that over and over until finally he fell into a troubled sleep. Late that night, he woke up suddenly. His skin felt funny. He reached over and turned on the small reading lamp on his nightstand. In the sudden light, he was puzzled to see that his arm was black from some kind of stain, and it felt as if it were on fire. Then, with a mental click that made him dizzy, he realized that his arm was covered with ants. His breath came in short gasps as his head creaked around to look at his chest. A grotesque nightshirt of black ants covered his chest, each angry creature chewing at his flesh with its tiny jaws. Jason's thoughts spun out of control. He tried to scream, but a wave of ants swarmed into his mouth, blocking his voice forever.